So where are you at right now with acting?
Yeah, so I'm still with Tracy. I've been with her since like right when COVID started. Basically, I want to say it was like November. It was like right around my birthday, right before my birthday of like 2019? Was that the first year of COVID? I don't even remember. But I'm still with her. I haven't had an audition literally since July of 2022 when I auditioned for The Righteous Gemstones, which was a huge audition. It was like a really big audition.
Is that the movie with Adam Sandler?
No, that's the TV show on
Oh, it's the
HBO
TV
Max.
show. Right.
The Danny McBride show.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I remember I got that audition, and I think I had like 4 days or something, and it lined up perfectly with my schedule. Like I had days off. So I remember the first day before I read the email or, read the breakdown. I briefly read the sides, just like, and then I watched the whole show in like a day, and it was so funny. Like this show, you haven't watched it?
Haven't watched it.
Totally should check it out. It's really funny. It's about like these televangelists, like this televangelist family, and like all the like con stuff that goes on with that.
I know what show you're talking about now. Yeah.
There's like so much crazy stuff that goes on. It's a really, really funny show, and it doesn't like punch down on, in my opinion, doesn't punch down on like religion in any way, which is really cool because I'm a Christian, so I like that. But it was really easy show to watch, and I remember I did all this work on this audition, and I like got my demo reel updated, and like it felt like the stars were aligning, because it like everything worked out, and it was like a full month of shoots, because it wasn't like a day player. It was like multi-episode. Mm-hmm. They wanted you for a portion of the summer, and then you had to go back in.
So was it a recurring role?
Recurring role.
Nice.
Multiple episodes. I think it was like 6 or 7 episodes. I haven't seen the new season, but the character I was auditioning for is like the right-hand man of the character of Steve Zahn in the show.
That's
so
sick.
Super sick. And we're trained, and they teach us like, you do the audition and you like let it go. You don't think about it, and I'm usually really good about that because the odds of hearing back are, slim to none. But I remember that one, it was hard to let go because it just felt like it fit so much in like the wheelhouse of who I am as an actor and the character I was portraying and like what they were looking for.
Right.
And it felt perfect, and it just didn't happen. So, and then unfortunately, like we've had basically since I signed with Tracy, like we've been battling this whole COVID thing. Now we're on strike, so it just feels like I've never even gotten a chance to like really get my like feet like sunk into it,
Right, because you kind of got that opportunity to have a respectable agent,
yes.
At least here in Florida,
mm-hmm.
and to kind of have that access to these bigger opportunities right when kind of things start going south. So I know what you mean.
Exactly. So it's like I know that nothing that's like kind of like held me back in a sense, if you even want to say hold me back, it's like nothing that I could do
out of your control,
completely out of my control. So, and I have to be willing to accept that, because it's like, yeah, I had like a bread and butter beginner agent. Like I forget the agency, but like Scott actually sent me them.
Right.
I was with them for like a year, and I was going on all these commercial auditions that I probably shouldn't have been at. And then I remember I did my first play to Luna at Artsake. And then this is when Kelly was with Diamond, and Kelly was there, former Artsaker, and she loved my performance in the play. So she brought me in, and I signed with Diamond, and I was getting some opportunities with Diamond a little bit. And then Kelly left, and then a good friend of mine, Lindsay, took over the agency, like as the agent. And she got me like my first big audition, which was Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. And that was a really good audition. That's when I met Jordan Woods Robinson, because I taped with him.
Yeah, book from tape.
Yeah, book from tape.
Yep.
Great acting studio and school in Orlando, Florida, as well. And that's when I kind of started getting my feet wet. And then like was like this perfect, almost like COVID has been like the biggest like obstacle in my acting career, but it also is something I have to be thankful for in a weird way, because if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have been put in this situation or position to get with Tracy when I did. And you can argue like that's the best agent in Florida. Eventually I probably would have ended up there anyways, but everything happened, like normal classes stopped. And so I was in class with Jordan, and our classes went online, and that went to like an actor as the business class, right? And so we started we built like a website, and like, talked about demo reels and like our resumes and how to brand ourselves and all this stuff. And then at the end of the whole class, we were sending off the packages with like a monologue that we were working on, which was a Shakespeare monologue. And then he gave us an audition, and we taped it and sent that off. And it wasn't meant as an audition. It was just like getting professional feedback from people in the industry. So it was like Jordan reviewed it. Claire Lopez, who at the time was still with Booker.
Yeah, I did Ugly Lies the Bone with Claire.
Yes, you did. Yeah, Claire is great. She's fantastic. Really talented actress, and a lot of knowledge. I've actually taken class with her as well, and she's really,
she's actually read for some of my auditions too.
Yeah,
she's great.
She's fantastic. Yeah. So she reviewed it, and then we also, I remember it got sent off to Susan at 22, and then Tracy at Brevard. And Susan got back to me like kind of right away, and she had really good feedback. And I don't remember if in the email she was like really super interested or anything like that. And then Tracy, in like Tracy fashion, you know, because she's so busy, she got back to me maybe like a month later, and it was I'll never forget her email. It was very simple, very blunt, and it was like, "Hi Tyler, website and reel looks good, should be updated regularly." And she's like, "I see you're with Diamonds, like, are you currently looking for other representation?" And that was kind of me going, oh, I know I have my foot in the door. And little did I know, this is what I mean by like perfect storm, is that at the time I was taking this class with Jordan, I was also just now starting taking class with Russ Blackwell. Both of these are like some of the best. Well, Jordan's now in Atlanta.
Yeah, getting with Russ Blackwell is kind of tough.
Yeah, best acting coach in Orlando, quite honestly. And yeah, very tough to get into. So stars kind of aligned. So like to just even go back again, like Lindsay, when I was with Diamond, she has a close relationship with Russ. So she got me into his workshop, one-day workshop, like last minute. And I took it, and it was fantastic. And I could tell me and Russ had like a good rapport with that. And then he like emergency like got me in his class because he had a drop, and I just took it. Even though I was in class with Jordan, and I think I was either taking a stand-up class at the time, or I was taking another class. I was in like AI. I think I was in AI at ArtSake. I was in the advanced intensive classes at ArtSake. So I was in 3 classes. And then while this was going on, I didn't know this at the time, but I had Russ Blackwell and Jordan Woods Robinson kind of like in Tracy's ear, letting her know, hey, there's this guy in my class who's like really talented, yada, yada, you know, just saying good things about me. And I didn't know they were doing that. You know, I had no idea. Like I just thought I had a good relationship with these teachers, and I was learning a lot from them. And so I'll never forget, like I replied to that email with Tracy, and then finally, like after the summer went by, we finally had a meeting over Zoom. This is when she first started doing like client meetings over Zoom. And like our meeting started, and she literally goes, "Well, Tyler, I've heard a lot of really good things about you." And I was like taken aback. I'm like, "Really? Like from who?" And she was like, "Well, from Jordan and Russ, they can't stop talking about you." And I was like, "Oh, wow." So immediately in the beginning of my meeting with Tracy, I'm like,
you're off to a great start.
I'm off to a great start.
You've got the great word in.
Yeah.
And some of the best words that you could have
all really good stuff, but it almost took me back to like a spot where like I prepared to like this meeting to start a certain way based off of like how I know she behaves and like what other people say about her. And then like, I'm like, oh shoot, I have like 2 of the best actors in the Orlando community, like kind of gassing me up to this best agent. So I'm like kind of like nervous, you know? And the meeting went really, really well. And I'll never forget, it ended with, you know, like, "Well, Tyler, you know, I'd be willing to move forward with this, but I want you to know, like, you're going to have to work really hard for me." And I just remember being like, well, this is all I want to do. So there's no problem here with me doing that. Like, I'll work as hard as I can. And then a week later, not even a week later, I got my first audition with her for Hightown, the show on Stars.
Okay.
Big audition, 1 episode, but multiple scenes. And I killed the audition, and like literally, like that was like my trial run with Tracy. Like she put me out there, like FinCan casting, like huge audition, no TV for someone with no TV credits. And she like, I remember she got back and said like that was a really good audition. And then from that point on, she just started kind of putting me out there before everything started to get really crazy with the COVID stuff. Yeah.
It's like the momentum was right there.
It started off really good for me. And then that December, I auditioned for Ozark with Feldstein in Paris.
Damn.
Yeah. So I remember I auditioned with
That is the one that I wanted to get.
When I got it, I was like, ooh. And it was like, it wasn't a huge role. So like, it was 1 episode, couple scenes. It was like a hitman kind of guy, like, you know, tough guy.
Right.
You know, I don't even know if the character had a name. So I'm like, you know, this is possible. And I did just like a solid audition, and I didn't end up booking it, and funnily enough, another guy at Brevard named Tyler booked that role.
No kidding.
Yeah, so like they picked another Brevard Talent Group actor for that. So I didn't book it, but the next month, I'll never forget, Tracy emailed me and said, "Hi Tyler, Feldstein in Paris is requesting you to audition for this role." So I quickly went, I went from, because it was like, I've submitted you for this. Now they're requesting you. So basically for like...
They knew you already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the audition you gave them was enough of an impression for them to be like, hey, get that Tyler back without having Tracy needing to submit you.
Exactly.
Right.
So I quickly, with like kind of hearing how like the industry works and stuff like that, because it's not something I really try to focus on. I really want to focus on like the work and stuff. I understood that like, this is like a thing. They're like they call it like finding a spot for you. Like, they're like trying to figure out where to put me, because even though like you look at me and like you can kind of get an essence of who I am, like within my like niche essence, like have like a very wide range. Like I'm a really interesting person. So I knew in the beginning of this, it would be like a big feeling out process for casting directors to kind of figure out who I was.
Right.
So basically for like the next 4 or 5 months, I was getting requested monthly by Feldstein in Paris to audition for stuff. And then the last one I got from them was for Florida Man, the Netflix show that's like either just come out or just coming out. I think it just came out.
Yeah, I think it just came out.
It literally just came out. And so I'll never forget, because they requested me for a role, but it had no lines. And it was basically like, I auditioned for it and I was probably going to book it. And Tracy was straight up like, I think we should turn this down. And I was like,
really?
I had to go, and I had to like comprehend in my head. I'm like really? Like, I didn't really understand. And she goes, well, what you need to understand, Tyler, is like, yeah, like this is an opportunity to work, but if you were to book this show, you will not be able to get recast on it in any capacity, and your character has no lines. So it's
valid points.
So I have to now trust my agent, who's been in the game for like over 20 years. She really knows her stuff, to go, okay, she believes in me this much to know that this show will come back around. There will be auditions for it again. There's going to be multiple seasons, even maybe potentially other episodes within this season where there's going to be a better fit for me, and we shouldn't lose out on that opportunity for like 3 seconds of screen time,
right,
where you're not even talking,
right?
So, and I trusted her, and I was like, you know what? And I to this day stand by that decision. And then we declined it, and literally that week or that Monday, I remember, is when SAG-AFTRA put out the
vax requirements.
The vax requirements for all A-list employees on set. And so, yeah, basically all of COVID, I had to kind of try to navigate my way through this thing where like I got an audition for Atlanta and then didn't book it, because it was basically going to come down to like, if you didn't have the vaccine, like you probably weren't going to book something, because like if they can find somebody else to fill that role that looks similar to you, like
they're going to do it.
It's cheaper,
Well, it's funny the big reason why I wanted to talk to you is because of this.
Yeah.
And I feel like we align on a lot of values and maybe convictions.
Sure.
And what's interesting between you and me is that you almost forged ahead and continued to forge ahead, whereas I kind of stepped out a little bit. And I have a similar story I'll tell you really quick, because I'm with Level. I'm not, that's the agent I'm with.
Great agency.
Yeah, Kelly
Great
and Tracy are good friends. And they've been great. And my vax mandate defining moment was with an audition. And I remember, because we never explicitly had the conversation, I had gotten a request to audition for the movie Till.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was for one of the, guys that was responsible for the acts against Emmett Till. So it was very racially charged. And so much so that she called me and was like, hey, this is a great opportunity, but you will be hated. Like, we had a conversation about the audition. Yeah. And I remember very specifically, once I did my tape, I went to book from tape for this. And there was a litany of questions. And I remember I knew they were going to have the vax question. And, do I lie? What do I do here? Because they weren't asking for proof, really. They just want to know yes or no. And I just went ahead and said no. Yeah, I just went ahead and said I'm not, and I didn't hear anything, and that was the last big audition I've ever gotten. Yeah. And that was it, and then I kind of took a step back after that.
Yeah, I think I think it's tough so like almost everybody I know, other than a few people, like including you, when this whole thing kind of came out, everybody was like, we're just going to get vaccinated, whether they agreed with it or not. And, like whether you agree or not, like that, I believe you should have the ability to do whatever you want to do. Right.
Yeah. So like, sure.
If you want to get this thing and like that makes you feel good and all that stuff, like, please, like all the power to you, all that stuff. And I remember I had the talk with Tracy because I had the mandate happen. And then I remember I was at my cousin's wedding that September. So now we're like 2 months after this. And I get my audition for Atlanta. I have to tape it at my cousin's wedding in this little inn we're in. And it was for a really cool role. And same thing though, I wasn't vaccinated. So like after I sent in the take, Tracy called and she just was like, the next week she called and she was like, hey, I just want to like find out what's going on with this thing. And she was very, very, I love Tracy because she'll tell you how it is, but never in a way, she's not like mean about anything. She's just like, she's very to the point.
She's not saying like, you're a fool for this. It's just like, this is how it's going to be.
Yep.
Right.
She's very to the point. She's very blunt. She's a busy woman and she's really good at her job. And, and she just told me, she's like, look, like you should do whatever you feel the most comfortable with. And I support whatever you decide to do.
That's awesome. That's not what I would have expected, to be honest with you.
But she also was very forward in telling me, just know if you don't, this could severely hurt your career. And she's like, take some time to think about it, but ultimately you have to do what you think is best for you. So, and I did. I took the time to think about it. I remember talking about it with my therapist and like all this stuff. And it took, I ultimately ended up not doing it, right? And that's for a multitude of reasons, whatever. It doesn't matter so much, But I had to be comfortable with the decision. And I remember like in the beginning of like telling myself like, this is the decision I'm making and I'm comfortable with it. And like not being comfortable with it for a period of time. I remember it took me a really long time to accept that this decision I was making was potentially really, really hurting my career.
I can relate 100% because I actually dwelled on it for a long time too. Like it wasn't like a no way type of thing. Like me, I talked about it with my wife too for, like, should I do it? Like it was a real debate because like you said, it ultimately it will be damaging because it slices your opportunities more than half at that point.
Like, if not even more.
If not even more, right.
Yeah, and that same thing, I talked to my wife about it. I talked to my parents about it, so many people. And I just ultimately wasn't comfortable with doing it and like actually getting the thing. So I had to be comfortable with accepting that this was my decision. And I remember for the first like 6 months, it was hard. Like I remember like feeling, really, devastated and like praying about it and just like feeling really shorthanded. And then I remember I ended up getting an audition for a movie. I think it was I got an audition for a local movie like that January. And classes had been out because Russ was dealing with a head injury and stuff. So I had not been in class. Like the industry wasn't moving for me. So I remember feeling, it was like, this was the first time in my career where I felt like I was kind of done. Like not by choice, but it felt like it just wasn't happening for me, So, and then I got this audition and I remember I just did the audition, like I did all the work that I learned and all this stuff, even though I had been all this time off. And it was a reminder to me that no matter how long I go without an audition or without a class or anything, like I will always be an actor. Whether I ever book anything professionally in my career, like nothing will ever take away the fact that I am an actor. And I know that now in my heart to be true. So that was a really good eye-opening reminder for me. But yeah, it was just like in these beginning stages, like just like having a hard time, like being able to navigate, because like feeling that you're so close, like getting requested and like knowing things are kind of happening because you have a really good agent and the work you do is really good. And, because I was working really, really hard and for things to just kind of stop and that continue till I'll never forget, like Tracy told me, hey, these mandates are about to be up in April or it was March. And once they're up, things should kind of start happening for you because production companies, like, they don't want to.
Didn't they extend it, though?
I don't remember if they extended it or not because I remember literally, like, on the date she told me this was happening is when the writer's strike started.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
so I don't know. I still don't even know if they extended it. I never even checked because...
At this point, it's like, we got another problem.
Another thing, yeah. You have the writer's strike, and then what does that bleed into? Now SAG-AFTRA strike.
Right.
So it's like, it's been really tough because it's like, before, you'd go out and you'd do like student films or independent stuff. And when I was younger and I had less responsibility and I wasn't married and things like that, it was easier to like take time off work and like go do this free thing. And
it gets more difficult.
It gets a lot more difficult, like as you get older, in my opinion, to just like do things essentially for nothing other than the sake of doing it, working on the craft, and like whatever, any other exposure after that is a bonus. Connections, like good reel footage, whatever. So it just it feels like it's been tough. Like it's definitely been tough. And by no means, like I'm definitely not out of the game. Like I'm still in, like, I was just at the SAG after rally that we had at Lake Eola like a month ago, and Tracy was there. And this was actually the first time I got to meet Tracy in person. She found me in the crowd. She came over, she gave me a hug, and we talked, and she invited me to lunch after. And, we had a really good talk. And like, I know that as soon as circumstances change, whatever, whenever, or if ever that will be, things will happen for me. And like, this is something that I'll always take with me that I learned from Russ Blackwell is something he always says is not only is it the way that you talk about the work is the way the work will be, but he's like, as long as you do the work and you focus on your craft, like, and not worry about the industry, like one day the industry will reward you for the work you do, right? So if I believe that in my heart to be true, I know that as long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I get an audition, I do it well, I'm working on my craft, whether it be from taking classes or reading plays or working on a monologue, doing stuff on my own, being creative.
Putting in the reps, yeah. Like not just sitting around waiting for something to happen, which sometimes that's a struggle, right? We're artists. It's a difficult thing to navigate, but I know that all the other external stuff aside, like the industry will reward you for the work that you do. So it's like everybody that focuses on all the industry stuff, like this whole time you're focusing on all like, what should my self-tapes look like? How should I have a setup? Like, how do I get more auditions? Blah, blah, blah. All of that doesn't matter when there's a strike going on or there's mandates or like there's just there's nothing being shot. Right.
Like, that's why none of that stuff should be what you're focusing on to begin with. What you should be focusing on is your craft, like who you are as an actor, your instrument, like all those things. So I'm still totally 100% in the game. I'm just like, there's really not a game to be played right now other than my own game.
And I feel like you have a healthy mindset, considering all the things that have happened, because it could easily push someone into despair and really accept that it might not work out. It's inspiring to me because I kind of went that route. Yeah. I kind of, in a way threw in the towel, but not completely, like, and I don't really like having my foot in one door and not completely and out the other. So, but funny thing I wanted to tell you with Tracy, I actually auditioned for her.
I remember you told me.
Yeah, and I'd had to do a cold read in her office, and she said no. Yeah. But I will say this though, I did that on the heels of some very lucky success early on, because they call it in Jenna Fisher's book, the Great White Buffalo, getting a SAG job as a non-union actor, or whatever she said. That happened to me very early. Yeah. So I got like a job and I went to Virginia, and I remember I thought I was, I made it. Yeah. It's going to happen. Yeah. Quickly got humbled fast. Because I actually auditioned for her after that had happened, and she didn't accept me.
Yeah. She's really tough in the room, and that's what I tell everybody, like, if I find out someone I know is going to have a meeting with her, like I just let them know, like, be prepared to, like, she's going to tell you how it is.
Yeah, no, and it's honestly it's refreshing in a way.
That's who I am as a person, right? Like, if I have an issue with you, like, I'm gonna come talk to you about it. If I don't like something, I'm gonna say it. Like, I like to just say things how they are and be upfront about stuff and open and honest. So if I'm doing something wrong, I want to be told I'm doing something wrong, and not like, I don't want it to be sugar coated. Right. That's just not how I am. And some people don't like that, and that's totally fine. If that's not your bag, like, I know some people don't have great relationships, or don't have great relationships, but they don't jive with Tracy's style as an agent, and would prefer other agencies and stuff, and that's totally fine. Like, at the end of the day, like, what people need to understand is, like, agents and actors are on the same level. Like, they work for us and we work for them. We need each other. So, like, my agent's not above me and I'm not above my agent. So it's like, you have to have a good relationship with your agent, and you have to ultimately be happy with who your agent is. So if you don't like a style that an agent has, like, then you shouldn't hire. You're essentially hiring this person to, like, help take care of your career. So,
right.
And I think in the beginning, a lot of us actors have a hard time understanding that.
Yeah, and I think too, and this is my opinion, but like that should be something that you should be able to handle, considering 80% of the job is rejection anyways. You know, you got to have some thick skin to get through the constant no's. You know, they may not be direct in your face, no, we don't want you, but not getting called back after putting in your best shot is rejection. So, you know, dealing with a cutthroat agent who, in the end, that wisdom and that brutal truth is hopefully going to help you. You know, I'd rather deal with that and at least know I'm in good hands.
I 100% agree. And yeah, I think what a lot of people that aren't in this industry don't understand is like, you know, we don't even hear no. You do this great audition.
You just
send it off.
If you don't like getting ghosted, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You're ghosted.
You don't hear back unless something is potentially going to happen.
Right. That's it. They don't have time to tell you, nice work, but sorry.
Yeah. And I can't message Tracy after and be like, hey, like, why haven't we heard back? You know, because one, she doesn't have time to go and ask this casting director. No one has time for this.
Right.
So it's like this is why like they talk about like you do the audition, you let it go, because at the end of the day, auditioning is my job, right? Like I do the work. I prepare myself so that when the audition comes, I can go to work and do my audition, do the prep, show up, do the takes, send it off, and then let it go. Booking is my vacation, essentially. It's still work.
Yeah.
I still have to show up prepared and doing it well and being professional on set and all that stuff, but that's like the cherry on top. Your job as an actor is auditioning. And if you don't like being told no or not hearing back, or you don't like doing auditions, or you get auditions and you don't feel like doing it, like this is not the career for you.
Yeah.
You know, there's other ways to get rich and famous if you want that are a lot easier, in my opinion. So that's why it's like my biggest thing when I talk to people that want to do this thing is like, well, do you love the craft? Like, do you love the work? Because like that's what matters. If you want to be rich and famous, like get on TikTok, you know, like start on YouTube. Like there's a lot easier ways to do this. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things. Like those things, you can make a legitimate living doing them, and they're great. But this type of work, like, man, like 1% of actors are working at a time. And then like 1% of all the actors in the world are like the 1%er A-list actors. Like, you know, like the odds are like no one will ever know who I am. Even if I book stuff, like it's just very unlikely.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Like there's a whole swath of professional actors who are constantly working in the professional world who you don't know who they are. Yep. It's always that person you're like, have I seen them before? You know, and they just pop up, and there's a whole, I feel like, segment of working actors who were there, and they're getting affected heavily right now.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? That aren't A-listers, who do rely on the next job. And yeah, they get booked often because they've developed the repertoire and the skills and the reps, and they can, you know, and they're reliable, and they've got the work to show for it, even though they're not A-listers or celebrities, you know? But that's interesting. But I kind of want to segue into, because, you know, you describe yourself online in your Instagram. I love what you say, modern Renaissance dude.
Yeah, modern day.
And that's why I wanted to have you on, because, you know, this is like a little series, Florida's Finest, an idea I thought of because, you know, going back to what I was just saying, I'm not really acting right now. But I just, you know, I have the desire to do stuff and to just be creative and build. And I figured, you know, this might be a good outlet for me right now, considering I did a podcast prior with a friend of mine. But you've gotten yourself into a lot of things, you know. So, I find it fascinating, and jiu-jitsu is one of them. How did that start for you?
Yeah, so jiu-jitsu is interesting because in high school, because I didn't act in high school. I was a jock. I was a sports guy. I played baseball my whole life. I was really, really good at it, and some misdirection with, you know, who I was and childhood stuff, you know, it just didn't work out. But in high school, one of my stepbrothers, he trained Muay Thai and MMA and stuff. And so for like 4 months or something, I was training with him at the gym, and I was doing like striking and jiu-jitsu and all these things. And I remember I ended up hurting my foot. Like I was going to take a kickboxing fight. I had probably no reason to take one at this point, but I was going to take one. And I ended up going to the fight, and the guy that ended up winning would have really beat me up really bad. But I hurt my foot, and then I just kind of stopped training. So, right. And then we segue, like we finish high school, we get to college, we moved to Orlando, and like all the physical aspects of things I do kind of just went away, right? Because like I'm not on a sports team in college and stuff. And I remember feeling like a void. And then I found acting, right? And I thought I filled that void. And in a sense, I did. You know, acting was like the first thing that like saved my life, really. And then in the beginning, I just remember I was going so hard acting. Like I was always in like 2 or 3 classes at a time.
I can relate.
Yeah. And I don't even think I could do that now. Like I went really hard. I took so many classes. I was obsessed with the work. And in a sense, I think you do have to be obsessed if you're going to do something as hard as acting, like try to do it professionally. But I remember I was out of shape. I like didn't have this physical thing. I remembered competing as a kid in various different sports. And like, I remember winning a district championship in soccer in high school, the first ever in my school history. Like I was a goalie and I had the winning penalty kick save. Like, and I just miss like that competitive aspect. And I just had that thought back to like training as a kid. And I've always watched UFC since I was a kid. My dad watched it, and I've always watched like combat sports. And so I was like, I want to start doing jiu-jitsu. And I found this gym. Shout out Brock Hooten. Jim's not around anymore. Super cool guy, Army Ranger veteran, super dope. I remember I just started going to that gym, and like jiu-jitsu for me was like a physical outlet to like kind of because Jenna talks about it in her book. You have to have other things you do, right? Like creative outlets. Like if you're acting, like you should be taking an improv class, or you should be like, maybe you should go do stand-up comedy, or maybe you rock climb or something. Like you have to do something else, like creative, that is like the thing that takes you out of like the acting space. And jiu-jitsu was that for me in the beginning. And it helped me a lot, not just like with, you know, training and like losing weight and stuff, but also like mentally. Like that was one of the biggest like pros for my mental health. Like
it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people who sign up for jiu-jitsu later say, oh, it saved my life.
Oh yeah.
What do you think it is about jiu-jitsu that helps people so much mentally?
Yeah, I think like, so I'll equate it to like, I remember when I was in high school, and I like partied a lot in high school, and I like drank and all this stuff. I remember like I was always the guy that was like ready to get into a fight, right? Mm-hmm. Like super stupid, like walk around like machismo, like just like you just walked around with like an ego, right? And
right.
Like, thought you were like the tough guy, and which isn't true. Like I wasn't at all. And when you start doing something like jiu-jitsu, it's a really, really humbling thing to like take your first class, and a guy that's like half your size, or a girl, just absolutely
fold you like a lawn chair,
put you in a pretzel, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, like this is, what the heck is this? What's going on? So I think jiu-jitsu is really beneficial in a lot of ways. Like one, like obviously like you're physically moving your body, like you're exercising. But it's also really stimulating to the mind. I equate it to like physical chess. Like, you know, you're doing this physically hard thing with another person, but it is very chess-like, and like give and take, and predicting moves, and trying to advance yourself like 3 steps at a time. But the biggest thing is like what it does to your ego. It's the most humbling thing you could ever do. There's really nothing quite like it, because like boxing, because it's actually Jocko Willink talked about it, and I think this is one of the best ways I've heard it like talked about from like a self-defense standpoint. Like you could be like a gold glove boxer, right? But if someone on the street wants to punch me, like I can run away. If someone wants to kick me, I can run away. But if someone grabs a hold of me, my option to run is gone. So like knowing what to do if someone does that, like I walk around in the world today knowing that if something were to happen, like I feel really confident in my abilities to diffuse the situation as safely as possible for myself and even the other person and people around me, right?
Right.
Because not everybody does this thing. And it's like, if you go to like one jiu-jitsu class, you already know more than like 99% of people that walk around in the world, right?
Right.
So now imagine if you do it for a week or for a month or for a year. And like that goes on. I've been doing this since 2019 now. I'm like really close to getting my purple belt. Like it's been a long journey. So what it does, like it's self-imposed suffering at the end of the day. I'm choosing to go to the gym and not just lift weights, but I'm going to a class where me and a bunch of other guys and girls grapple with each other, and for X amount of time, however long the round timer is going on for, this other person's trying to rip my head off, you know? And when someone's on your back with like both hooks in or a body triangle and they're trying to choke you, like you don't have time to think about how annoyed you are at the world, or the fact that this thing didn't happen for you, or I have no money in my bank account. And like these things, like you can't think about that stuff. You are self-imposed, putting suffering upon your life. And that way, when you're done and you leave, like the day-to-day, like normal kind of stress that comes with like your life, like someone cutting you off in traffic, like if someone cuts me off after jiu-jitsu class, I don't even care, you know? So there's something about doing things that are difficult, but not only doing things that are difficult, but doing something physical with another person that it's really hard, and it's just so humbling. Like it's essentially like checks your ego, right? Because before I used to walk around thinking I was tough as crap, you know, which was not true. But like I believed that in my head,
right?
And it took me taking a class with people that knew more than me to go, oh, I don't know nothing. Like rolling with my professor for the first time when I rolled with Brock, or even now today when I roll with my new coach Karinga, like they can just do whatever they want to me.
Right.
You know, I am a feeble child in the hands of these people. Like
even at the level you're at.
Even at
still.
the level I'm at. Training since 2019, 4 years of just consistent training. Like these guys can do whatever they want to me, right? So it checks your ego in a way that I don't think a lot of other things can. You know, because it's a long journey. It's like a lifestyle change. Like you're doing this, what do they say? Like it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something. In acting and anything, that equates to 10 years, right? Like in average black belt times 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you're doing this, you're probably doing it for a long period of time. And yeah, like your ego's going to be put in check. It's just impossible for it not to.
You did sumo though at one point.
Right. So I started doing jiu-jitsu and, you know, fell in love with it. Like it really became like my second love. Everything I've started has always been to start as like a thing, like a hobby. And it always becomes more than that. It's so strange. Like it's why I have a fear of starting things, because I'm scared I'm going to
get wrapped up into it.
Exactly. So I remember my first coach's gym, Brock Hooten's gym, closed down because of COVID and stuff, and I didn't train for like 7 months, and I was getting depressed and all this stuff, and then I found one of the guys that I trained with went to this other school, and he told me this school is cheaper, and they do a lot of wrestling stuff. It's really cool. I like their stuff. You should check it out. So I go to Iron Life. Me and Coach Karinga hit it off, and like I remember like within the first 6 months of being in the school, he was like, oh, we're going to have a sumo wrestling seminar. And I was like, what? Sumo wrestling? And he's like, yeah, in Florida, in Panama City, is like a world's competing gold medalist at the national level in the U.S. Sumo wrestler at the light heavyweight division. And I'm like, all right, well, that's cool, because something I didn't do growing up was wrestling. Like I never wrestled.
Right.
So my wrestling was dog, like really, really bad. So I was like, well, I'll do this thing, one, because it sounds interesting, and two, because it'll make my wrestling better. And also, I remember I was a fat kid, right? So I remember being a kid and watching like the Three Ninjas movies and like seeing the sumo wrestlers, and I thought they had the coolest job, because I was a fat kid and I'm seeing these big guys doing like crazy stuff. And if you don't know this, like sumo wrestlers, like at the professional level in Japan, are some of the most flexible people. They can do, it's mandatory that you can do a full split as a professional, mandatory, right? So these guys are freak athletes. It's just, we're not exposed to it as Americans, because like, we're not there. Like it's not.
I was gonna say, because it has not really made an impact here.
No. So this seminar happens, right? I end up getting COVID, so I can't do the seminar, right? So, but after like a couple weeks later, the guy came back to like just start a class on Sundays. So I showed up because I didn't get to do the seminar, and I went to my first practice. They put a mawashi on me, and like I did pretty good. And so the guy was like, oh wow, like you're actually like kind of good at this. If you want to consider it, like we're all going to go to nationals this year. Like if you want to come. And I'm like, oh, I mean, cool. When is it? And they were like, oh, it's in a month. And I'm like, a month? Like,
a month to train.
This is my first class. Like, I was like, I'll think about it. Right?
Yeah. I'd be like, oh, thank you.
I remember that was a Sunday, and I go to class on Monday. I was training twice a day at this point on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I'm like talking to Karinga, and I'm like, hey man, so like, yeah, it's crazy, right? They think I should go to nationals after a month. Like that's there's no way that makes sense.
That's not real, right? Like that can't work.
And he goes, well, we wrestle, don't we? And I'm like, I mean, yeah. He's like, so fuck it, why not? And I'm like, I mean, okay, all right. So then basically like from that moment, I was like, I'm going to go compete in Austin, Texas in this thing that I literally just tried for the first time. And I was lifting weights for it, and I had to cut weight for the first time, which was a whole thing. And I remember, like, I went and I had really no expectations, but the people on my team were pretty good. Like, my coach is an incredible athlete.
Right.
We have this guy, Cornelius, shout out Cornelius, who he's literally a former medalist at multiple different weight divisions. I went and I ended up, no one knew who us Florida guys were other than Cornelius. And I basically ended up being the only Florida sumo guy who didn't medal. I got 4th place at lightweight. So the last match I had, if I had won that match, I would have medaled, right?
That's wild.
And this is at the national level.
The highest level, I'm assuming.
Highest level in the United
for
States.
Sumo wrestling here in the U.S.
Yeah, there's amateur sumo wrestling in the United States. There's a whole federation, the USSF, and there are, unbeknownst to me at the time, there are clubs all over the U.S. There's like 3 different clubs in 3 different cities in Texas. There's a club in Los Angeles that has legitimate ex-professional and current professional sumo wrestlers that like either live there, like the ex-professional ones that live there and teach, or like people will come, like Japanese guys.
Right.
And this guy, Andrew Fruand, who he's a part of the USSF, like the federation. He lived in Japan back in the day. This is kind of the whole reason sumo came here, right? He lived there and he worked with these sumo wrestlers and he like brought that to America. And like every year there's the US Open in LA, which is like this huge cash prize event where like all these international people come wrestle. So like people don't know this, but in the US there's like a scene. It's still pretty young, right? Like a lot of the people that do sumo are like, some are legitimate athletes and some are people that like, kind of similar to that story I said in the beginning, like it was something they were always fascinated by.
And they're kind of just dabbling with it right now.
And they felt like it was something they could do, right? Because this sport spoke to them as a person. So, but it's growing fast, like with actual athletes. Like my coach came in, former professional fighter, black belt in capoeira, black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, like all these accolades. And he went and he got gold in his division, right? Damn. And then last year he got gold in his division too at the national level. Like, so like the sport is really elevating. Like there's this guy, Jordan Karst out of Arizona, who's like, he was a legit like collegiate wrestler who came in at his weight division, my coach's weight division, and like started wrecking stuff. So like there are some really high level guys. And then in the world level outside of Japan, there's incredible amateur sumo scenes in different countries like Egypt, I think it's Denmark, like they're all over Russia, like there's so many crazy, Mongolia, like there's so many amazing like amateur sumo wrestlers, and like some of these people end up going to Japan and like working their way up in the ranks and becoming a professional sumo wrestler. So it's crazy. Like, so I've competed at the national level twice, in 2021 and 2023. I didn't do it in 2022 because there was really no benefit, but I got 4th in both of those. So I've missed medaling out in my division twice now. Mm-hmm. And then I've also gone to LA to compete in the US Open at like the highest level. I've gone out to Arizona or to Las Vegas to try for the North American Sumo Wrestling Championships to try to get on the US Olympic team in 2022.
Damn.
To compete. Yeah. Well, it was the end of 2021. In 2022, there's this thing called the World Games, right?
Right.
So there's like the Olympics, and then right below the Olympics is the World Games. And the most popular sport in the World Games is sumo wrestling. The fact that it's still not an Olympic sport is pretty interesting. And so that tournament, top 3 in each division, I think it was top 3 in each division qualified to be on the U.S. team to compete at the World Games.
That's wild.
Yeah. So
okay.
I literally went to Vegas to try to get on that team.
So you went further in this than I actually anticipated.
Yes. So this whole thing started with like, oh, I just want to like get better
check it out.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to
supplement what I'm doing.
Yeah. Like let me get better at wrestling so it'll make my jiu-jitsu better. And then it became a thing. I've now competed. I still have yet to compete in jiu-jitsu, right? Like I've just been,
which is interesting. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. I've gone hard in jiu-jitsu, but like I just haven't like competed yet. But I've like competed at literally the highest level that you can in sumo wrestling in the United States of America. And that was just supposed to be a thing that supplemented this other thing.
That's so ironic. That's so weird.
And that's kind of what I meant. Like, yeah, modern day Renaissance dude. There's like all these things that I've dabbled in and done at like whatever levels and have been successful in like pretty much all of them. And it's almost at a detriment because like I'm like the guy that's like pretty good at so many things versus like being a master of one thing, right? You know?
I feel you. A jack of all trades,
Yes.
master of none.
Right.
And
So-
it's funny because that leads me to kind of like we met through a mutual friend in the acting world, but ended up working together briefly at Gatorland.
Yeah, 8 months I worked there.
Yeah, 8 months. And, you know, you had a fascination with like Steve Irwin and animals prior to this because I know you have you have a background in animal work. So what did you take from your time at Gatorland? Because that's where we worked together. For those listening, you know, we were hands-on with alligators and reptiles. Yeah,
super hands-on.
While doing shows.
Yeah,
so it was like a hybrid of live entertainment with animal handling.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was a really interesting job. And I remember when I got that job, like I literally like thought I hit the jackpot. Like I thought like all my childhood dreams came true, right? Because when I was a kid, my dad and my mom, like when I was a little kid, would put in the VHS and record every Steve Irwin episode. And
it's the best show of all time when we were that age.
I would watch it. That's all I would watch as a kid. I was obsessed with animals. I would go outside and catch different things. Like I wanted to be Steve Irwin. Like I loved animals my whole life. Like there was times I wanted to be a zoologist or a veterinarian. Like I wanted to be a wildlife photographer, like all these things. And I wanted to work with all these animals, like marine biologists. I wanted to study sharks, like all this stuff. And when I got that job as someone that had 7 years of experience in veterinary practice, and then I had a 2-year degree in theater, I was like, I made it. I was like, I just got a career. Unfortunately, the job being as good as it was, like it just didn't fall in line. Like it didn't have those things that would have made it a career. Yeah. You know, which is really unfortunate because it should be a career. But man, I learned a lot from that job. Like not only was it, you know, I got to be hands-on, like literally with alligators, like touching alligators. Like I even got to like move a Nile crocodile, like a small Nile crocodile at one point. Like, you know, we're picking up rattlesnakes and stuff. Like I learned so much about myself, and I learned a lot about, you know, being an entertainer. And man, cause like as tough as that job was, like it cost me more money to have that job. Like I was going negative with that job. Yeah. Like I was literally barely paying my bills if I was paying them. But what kept me going back there was honestly the kids. Like when you would go and do a show and then kids would come up to you and want to talk about these animals. And like, I realized like this thing that I was really passionate about, like animals and conservation and all these things, like I could then take to these kids. Cause like, I remember being a kid and like seeing Steve Irwin or seeing this other person do this thing. And like, it was something I always remembered. Right. So it's like, I had the opportunity to be that memory for this kid. And like, that's what would keep me coming back. Cause now that kid's going to grow up and he's going to be passionate, or she's going to be passionate about animal conservation or performing or like whatever.
Yeah. Cause you can see yourself in those kids.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Cause I agree with you. Like you know, them running up to you after those shows and wanting to, you know, touch the animal or ask questions, or quite frankly, they are seeing, you know, they're idolizing you, and you can see yourself in them. Like that's exactly how you were at that age. Yep. Especially when you have this passion, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, so it's like, it's this weird way that like two things that I was super passionate about, animals and the wilderness and like the outdoors and performing and entertaining and inspiring, like
it's a great combo.
It was an incredible combo. And like, man, I miss a lot about that job. And like I said, things like that should be more easily accessed careers if things are done properly. And like, you know, if I could have made that a career, I 100% would have.
Well, because if you think about it, if that was Disney, it could be.
Exactly.
No offense to them. But the difference is, though, the catch is if it was Disney, there'd be no hands-on.
It'd be no hands-on.
Because that's the one thing about these smaller animal parks is, you know, being hands-on with these crocodilians. You know, because at Disney, at Animal Kingdom, they're hands off when it comes to the crocodiles and alligators.
It's like a give and take, right? It's like if I'm at Disney as an entertainer, or if I'm at Universal as an entertainer, like I know I'm in the union as a theatrical actor. You know, I'm gonna work for X amount of minutes,
right? Because that'd be considered entertainment and probably stunt pay.
Yep, stunt pay. Yeah. I'm gonna have a break. They're gonna pay me really well, but I'm not going to be able to do certain things that we got to do. Right. But the downside of that, of not being in the union and not being like accredited in certain aspects as zoos or theme parks or whatever, like I get to do a lot of these really cool things, but I'm also doing it at the time for $10 an hour.
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's that thing of like, man, I think I should be getting paid more to do this job, but also I really want to do this job.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a really complex, kind of frustrating and sad situation, because man, it really like, that could be a career. And, you know, I would love to maybe like at some point in my future life, like figure out a way to like make that a thing for people, because, you know, it's important. Like, you know, teaching people about animals, you know, people just see things on the internet, or, you know, like it's one thing to see something or hear somebody tell you a story or whatever, and to actually physically see these things in real life and like have a professional talk to you about them, that's what's going to get people to really understand and respect wildlife. Because how often do you see people go to like national parks and they're like 10 feet from a bison or something like that? It's like, these things are things that shouldn't be as widely like accepted in like in the actual like populace of the world. But if more things like this existed, if there was more opportunities to be Steve Irwin-esque in the safest possible environment for yourself and for the animals, we would be able to teach people so much about like the planet and population, species, and like just everything about animals, you know? So I definitely learned a lot. Like, I mean, it was fun, like getting to do shows, and like, you know, there were sometimes you had hundreds of people watching you, and like you're feeding.
Yeah, those shows would get packed on those busy weekends, man.
Yeah, huge busy weekends. There was like hundreds of people. You couldn't see past like the crowds of people, like, and you have these gigantic alligators and sometimes crocodiles jumping up and grabbing chicken out of your hand.
Yeah,
like it was crazy.
It was sick.
It was super sick. It was like it's hard to explain. Like trying to explain that to somebody is like. It's hard to explain what that feeling is like. Like it's about as Florida man as you can get.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so
I would agree.
It was really, really, really cool experience. Like, you know, I wish some things might have went a little differently with it, but I learned a lot about myself as a person. I learned a lot about myself as an entertainer. I learned a lot about myself as someone that respects wildlife. And it taught me so much, because it was literally taking two things that I love so much and like putting them into one and learning what that looks like, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I can, again, you know, relate to that exact feeling, because it feels like the lotto when you first start working there. And then you realize, you know, long term, it's just not sustainable.
No, it's not sustainable at all.
But I will say, your litany of things that you do doesn't end, because the next thing that I wanted to ask you about is, when did you start DJing?
So that's actually the thing I've done the longest.
Interesting. Because I've never really talked to you much about this aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Before.
So the DJing stuff, it doesn't come up as much anymore. I'm kind of known as like the best DJ in Orlando that nobody knows.
Interesting.
Because I DJ like once or twice a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've been DJing since I was in high school, since like sophomore year. So basically, in my best group of friends, who all these guys were my best men in my wedding, like we all still talk to each other every day, right? And we've been best friends since elementary, middle school, high school, throughout when people joined the group. And one of our best friends got interested in DJing. He started DJing. And then that literally evolved into all of us learning how to DJ. And we would throw all the sickest parties like in high school. Like if you can DJ and you're in high school, you are going to be by default throwing some sick ass parties. We threw our prom after party. Like we would, we threw camping music festivals. Like we went crazy. Like there,
went hard.
We went hard. Yeah. Like we threw a super illegal camping music festival out basically in the Everglades in South Florida, like right next to a neighborhood that was so illegal. Like we built a stage. We rented a U-Haul truck, and that was our shuttle that we would pick people up from where they would park by this church.
Dude, that's wild.
And then the next year, we took it to the next level. We rented out a camping ground in Ocala National Forest, and like didn't tell the people we were throwing a festival, and we threw a huge 48-hour nonstop music festival, silent disco in the middle of the night. Like it was over 100 people that attended, like, and we had like the best DJs in Florida like come play. It was crazy because we joke about it, like people paid us for us to like party with our friends because there's all our DJ friends throughout the state, but it was like the sickest, like the things we did, like, and now today, like one of those friends, works for 3 Points Music Festival in Miami, and he's like literally making a living, like working for a music festival.
So he went all the way.
Went all the way.
Yeah.
Went all the way. He's like I think he's like the main booker for them right now. Like he is the one that reaches out to talent and books them for stuff. And then another one works for a talent agency, and he's literally Lil Pump's agent. Yeah, is he his agent? He's literally the guy that travels with Lil Pump everywhere and like organizes all of his stuff.
Like a manager?
Yeah, he's like a manager, I guess, in a sense. Like I don't know the technical terms. Like
Gotcha. He's an important role with him.
Incredibly important. He's like literally with him all the time. So like we've done, and I have so many friends in the industry that like I've worked with guys that are now like getting huge, and it's nuts. So basically, I've been doing this for over those 10 years, right? Like over those 10,000 hours. So it's like something I'm like low key, like super duper good at. I just rarely ever do it because if you want to like really do the thing, you kind of have to go hard, right? Like you have to like sell yourself and like constantly be going to parties and like get people putting you on shows, and you're not really getting paid in the beginning.
So you have to withdraw from all the other avenues.
Yeah. And it's like, I know my worth, you know, I know my worth. I should be getting paid a certain amount, but it's hard to like convince people to pay you when like you're not really around, right? And also like the type of music I play, like in the Orlando community, which has gotten a lot better music.
It seems very niche.
It's very niche, right?
Yeah.
It's very niche, right? So, and like I'm past a lot of like what commercially people want. That being said, every time I go play out, even though I'm playing music nobody's ever heard before, it's always packed. You know, shout out Justin Ziegler. Like he's booked me at Elixir a couple times, like closing sets.
I've seen that.
Every time I've played there, like even though no one knows who I am, like everyone's going crazy. Like it's packed out. Like I have people coming up to me wanting to take pictures with me, like all this stuff. And I like,
you're right. Let's just get your DJ name is Shaggy Powers, right?
Yeah, Shaggy Powers.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've literally been doing this for so long. It's just something I don't do all the time. That's really kind of like, it's something I really love to do. So that's kind of like the hobby I've kind of kept as a hobby. Like I don't want to pursue it professionally. Like I don't want to be a guy that like travels and DJs all over the place all the time. I could see myself doing like small tours here and there, but I've also never gotten into like music production, right? So if you want to like really break out as a DJ, you're making your own music.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause, you know, I've gone to a festival or two, and you know, they make their own music in addition to DJing.
There's a very small community of like known DJs in the world who are really good DJs that don't make music, like Ben UFO. Like to get to that level, you have to be like an insane track selector, incredibly proficient DJ, right?
Yeah, because it makes sense, because you have to be able to outperform every other DJ without making your own music to mix in, to sell you, right?
You can't sell your music. You're selling yourself as a literal DJ, like contextually. And like the base level of people that come watch a show, like they're not judging the DJ's performance based on how like technically good he is at spinning, right? If I go to a show, I can hear like how good a DJ is, you know? But like main people that go to stuff, they're not going to hear that. They just want to hear good music. So if you can get to that level without really producing, that's crazy.
Hats off to you.
Yeah. So like I have a good buddy who I've known for a long time, and he's like in that friend group, but we didn't go to high school together, and he's like blowing up. His name's DJ Flash Drive, really, really good friend of mine. And that's like kind of the difference. Like he lived in Daytona, was driving to Orlando, just grinding out in the scene, just trying to get on shows for free, and like started making music. And eventually he's like become like the most known DJ in Orlando. He's huge. Like this guy could blow up at any minute. Like he's such a good DJ, and his music. Is
this the dude who you posted about just recently?
On my story. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
He just played at the Vanguard.
Gotcha.
First of all, such a nice guy. Like one of my best friends. I love this guy. He was in my wedding also. And he's just such a talented DJ, like such a talented DJ and a very good music producer, good track selector. So like some of the best sets I've had is me and him going back to back. Right. And like he, for the longest time, was like going up to people, even when he was as big as he was, and being like, yo, that's the best DJ in Orlando. And I would like, oh, no. Like, I wouldn't want to own that because I'm really bad at taking compliments.
Right.
But like that guy is saying that about me, and he's got to be saying that about me for a reason. So it's like, it's something I would love to do more, like, cause I'm passionate about music. Like there's something about like reading a room and curating music.
It's like a live energy flow, man.
It's just like, it's a form of entertainment, right? So it's like if I'm on stage doing stand up, which I used to do for a time as well, like, and you're telling jokes, like you know how to like segue how you say certain jokes and stuff to like feel and read off the room, right? So like when I'm playing music in front of a crowd, like I can ride that wave with them. I can take them on that journey based on like the feelings I'm getting. So it's what made me a better DJ is like acting, like being an actual like entertainer.
Interesting.
Like all these things in weird ways have made me better at each thing. It's so strange how things kind of interconnect.
Do you think it's because you were able to take elements of stage presence from acting and implement it into DJing because that's a very similar experience, because I've done a lot of theater. And there's a very similar, I mean, obviously you're confined to the constraint of the story and the script, but there is an energy like transfer that is felt on nights more than others, even in something like that. So is that something that you probably took from acting?
Sure,
absolutely. Because, even in acting class, you got to act in front of people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in front of a camera.
I mean, I think I've always been someone that was really good at like being like the center focus of things. Like, I think that's why I got into acting in a weird way. Like I was always like in high school, I was the senior superlatives. I won party animal. Like I was the Falcon.
You like putting on a show.
Spirit figure. Yeah. It's just something I've always been really good at, but without a doubt, like acting, learning how to be vulnerable in front of a bunch of people, which is really scary, absolutely has made me better at so many things, but definitely performing as a DJ. Cause like, you can't just like show up. I mean, you can, and just like play music and like have no energy, right? You can, people are listening to the music, but like people want to show, people want to see,
right.
People are going to have fun if they see you're having fun,
right?
So if I'm up DJing and I'm like getting in it and like having a good time, like the crowd is going to feel that energy on me and we're going to have a good time together. This is now going to become a mutual experience.
Right.
A lot of people that get into DJing get into it for that ego thing we were talking about earlier, right? They want to inflate their own ego. They want to feel good about themselves. I'm a DJ. I'm above everybody, literally, physically. Like I'm on a stage, they're down here, and they're all here listening to me. And they make it about themselves. And they play the music they just want to play. Versus like when I DJ, like I don't want to be above them. I want to be on the ground level. Like
right.
Some of the best DJ sets I've ever played is where I'm level with the crowd. And I want to enjoy this with them. So I want to feel like if I play a song and I can tell they're not feeling it, I'm going to change directions, which doesn't happen too often, but you have to be able to kind of feel what's reading the room. Like where's the energy at, like taking them on that journey. So it's like, absolutely as an actor performer, like it absolutely like equates, there's even some famous like actors, like Idris Elba's like DJing.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. Isn't Idris Elba a DJ?
And like, we can talk about how technically proficient he is at DJing or what type of music he plays or whatever, and none of that matters. At the end of the day, that guy is an actor, and if any time you've ever seen him DJ, like clips of him DJing, he is in it. Like he's putting on a performance, and that's ultimately, whether he's Idris Elba or not, that's what's bringing people coming back.
Right.
Like he's really into it, So yeah, I definitely think there's a correlation between the two. Yeah.
So DJing, the Shaggy Powers, that's just it's wild because at one point I had thought about getting into it because I was going to a lot of music festivals at one point, and there is just something, what you just described, like how you want to be on the ground level and just that they're having a good time, the crowd's having a good time, you're having a good time. It just is so attractive, that experience.
That's the word I was literally just about to say. The experience. And
I can only imagine what it's like for you, the orchestrator, in a sense, enjoying the experience with this crowd, enjoying it with you. And it's essentially a live creative event.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a sense of discovery in mixing as you're going. Because like you said earlier, you might have to change directions depending on how the crowd is or whatever, so you can almost have a sense of discovery and like, damn, this shit is going good with something you might have just made up right there on the spot mixing.
Yeah.
Or an idea that you might have had to mix something with something else.
100%.
Yeah.
I think what you just said is exactly the way you have to describe it, right? Like you're giving them an experience. Like this is an experience and I want it to be good, right? So it's like, I always download music before a set that I have, but I never plan my sets. Like I don't go, I'm going to play these 12 tracks in this hour set. I might go, I want to play a lot of these songs, but I will always, everything's always like impromptu on the fly. Like I'm playing a track and then I'm like going through while this track's playing, I'm listening to it and I'm like going through my library and I like find a song I like to try to mix in key. So I'm like checking the keys and stuff so things sound really well. And so I like load a song in key. And sometimes it's a song I don't even remember. And I'm like, I hit play, like, so the audience can't hear it, but I can hear it. And I'm listening to it. And I'm like, wow, this song sounds really good. And then I'll listen to them together. And I'm like, wow, this sounds really good together. And like, you'll play it. And while you have both songs playing at the same time, like sometimes you end up like doing like some of the most insane, like I guess you could say mashups, but like blending of two songs together while you're filtering out of one track into the other. Or sometimes if you're lucky enough and they have like 3 or 4 CDJs, I can play 3 channels at a time, which is my preferred way to DJ. Like I can mix with 2. It's very simple. I'm playing a song here, I load a song on here, I start playing this one, and then I switch from this one to this one, and then back and forth, right? But if I have 3 channels, I'm literally going boom, 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 boom. Like I'm literally jumping between 3. So a lot of the times, like there's like a large portion of the set where not just one song is playing at a time.
Right.
So it's literally like an experience, not just for the audience that you're having an experience figuring this all out on the fly as you go. So it's exactly what you said. That's what makes it attractive for people and wanting to try it. And that's why I'm grateful that, my friends were doing it and I saw how fun it was, and then I started doing it, and then it just became like this thing. And I've had the opportunity to play in Gainesville, Jacksonville, like, Orlando a lot, in South Florida, Miami. I've played a venue at Miami Music Week.
I was going to say, you've done quite a bit of shows from what I've seen.
I've gone around and done a lot. Yeah, for sure.
And I think too, it's important to note I feel like nowadays maybe it's not so much of a misconception of DJing, but I feel like people a lot of times just assume it's like, oh, they're just up there playing music. And it's that as well, in my opinion, is a humbling experience trying to do it for the first time, because that skill set is not easy to be able to mix things so smoothly without you even noticing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think it's not as appreciated maybe nowadays, just with how popular festivals and electronic music has become, but feel like, a lot of people don't realize there is a lot more to it than just getting up there and just playing one track and then playing the other track.
Exactly. Cause if you're in the audience, like you think it's easy because like I'm putting my tracks are on beat, right? So you can't tell that I'm playing 2 different songs. You never can tell when the transition is unless like you have a really good ear, or you can just notice, oh, this is a different song.
Right.
But like because it sounds so smooth all the time, you think I'm literally just hitting play. And some DJs use a sync button. They just sync. They've made it to where it can be very easy. But if we go back in the day,
I didn't realize they had a sync button.
Yeah.
There's so many damn buttons on those boards, bro. I mean, I think they're intimidating.
So like you can make it super easy for yourself to literally hit sync, but I don't do that because as an artist, like I believe like that's like cheating in a sense. So I'm not gonna use sync. But
that's the point of what I was saying earlier. The skill of doing it. Yeah.
Some people will do it because they're touring DJs and they're DJing all the time, and just like this is like their job. So it just makes it easy to make sure everything's good. But like now, if we go back in the day to like vinyl
scratching,
scratching or not even scratching, just you have 2 record players and you have a vinyl on, and there's literally 0 electronics, right? Like I can't see anything. And then I put this other vinyl on, I put down the needle, and like I now have to make this song the same speed, the same BPM as this song, and I have to get them on beat with each other.
With no digital assistance.
That's all ear, right? So like I think this is where a lot of like new school DJing is lost. Like I'm not the greatest vinyl player. Like I can play vinyl a little bit, but I'm not very good at it. Like it's a very, very difficult skill set. But as a electronic DJ, like using CDJs, like I have a very good ear. And I think naturally I have a really good ear. That's why I got really good at DJing really quick, is because like I don't use a sync button at all, but like my tracks never clash. Like my transitions always sound really good. And it's just because I can put a song on beat with each other. And like, I have the ability. I couldn't like listen to a song and be like, oh, I know what key this is in. But like, because I'm using CDJs, I can look at the keys of songs. This is where I think a lot of DJs get it wrong too. They don't mix in key. Like mixing in key is what makes your set sound good. Like
I feel like that's an element that does go over people's heads too.
If you look at the music wheel, right, and you have a song that's here, and you're trying to play a song that's over here next into it, like it's gonna sound a little odd. Versus like if I'm playing in that same key, or if I'm going one key up or one key down, or completely across the wheel, right? Like this is where things get a little bit better. So, like there's just technical elements to DJing that even electronically through the use of CDJs it makes it not as easy as people think, like knowing your high, your mid, your low, like, you know, all the filters, effects, like stuff like that. But if you were to take like 2 vinyl record players in a mixer and throw records down and just ask anybody to come up and try to mix this together, they would realize really quickly how hard DJing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even DJs that I know can't do that. And I would even have a hard time doing that because of how difficult it is. So yeah, it's definitely more intricate than a lot of people think, but I think that's genuinely just because it sounds so good, people don't think it can be hard.
Right. They make it look easy.
Until you hear a bad set.
Yeah, and then it's quite obvious.
I've heard like bad sets at the professional level, at festivals. I've heard.
We have too. Yeah, I've had
DJs train wreck, you know, like, and it's like, wow, that's really bad, you know, but some people still don't even notice, right? So yeah, but it's definitely a technically proficient endeavor, and it is also, like you said, it's really fun, and it's quite an experience, and it's one I'm glad, because I've gotten to meet some incredible people in all the avenues of these things. I've gotten to meet in the DJ community a lot of really incredible people and a lot of interesting people.
I feel like the DJ community here is pretty decent considering the nightlife in Orlando is, I guess it's obviously not like the craziest nightlife in the country, but I feel like it's more than what people might expect of Orlando. It's
definitely more than what people expect. And again, like taste-wise, it's gotten so much better. It's gotten so much better. But like a thing that I like to say a lot about like the Orlando music scene is like, I've been here now since 2015, and it feels like every year
it gets better.
Well, that definitely, but what I mean even is every year, like the guys, because I only DJ like twice a year, right? So I'm every 6 months I'm coming out and like seeing faces, right? And it's like every year, people that were here before are gone, and it's like these new faces in. So like I feel like there's a huge turnover rate with DJs
I see.
in this area, and a lot of the time, I personally believe this, and maybe some people disagree with me, but I feel like in the community of DJs that are active that you have here at a time, a lot of the music taste is the same. It feels like a lot of people are playing a lot of the same stuff. Like I've gone out and played, and I've gone out again and like heard people playing tracks that I played on the same night that I played as them. And it's like, oh, you were playing before me, and I played that track last time I played. That's interesting. Like,
so a lack of originality.
Of originality. I think there can be an issue with that, but like, don't get me wrong. There are some incredible DJs in this town. Like I said, my friend DJ Flash Drive, there's really like some top-notch DJs. And then some of the best DJs in this town have been here forever.
Right.
Like they've been in this scene for 10 plus years, and they're like really, because Orlando back in the day was huge.
Interesting.
Like, yeah, this was a party city, big time. And like the taste, like I said, has gotten so much better. But yeah, I've been here for a long time, and I've had my tough times getting in, and you know, being in and getting out. It just with like, you know, being, you know, I'm a vocal guy. I'll say it how it is, and I like to play a certain type of music, and I know I'm good at what I do. So it's like, it's hard. It can be hard to just like take any gig, because it's like, if I'm going to go out and be out late when I don't really stay out late, and it's like, you're going to have to pay me, right? You know, so, and then it's like, okay, well, this is what I feel like I'm worth. And, you know, it's like anything else, you know, creative that you do. But it's definitely a really cool endeavor, and it's something that if people feel passionate about doing, they should try it, because it's not that hard to get into. But like getting really good at it, that's the difficult thing. And then the big thing is like, you know, finding music that speaks to you. But when I go out and DJ, I want to play music people have never heard, right? Like I don't want to play stuff and people are like, oh my God, I love this song.
Yeah.
I want people to be like, wow, this track is insane. Like some of the best sets I've ever been to, I didn't know a single track the DJ played. And then you pull out your phone, you try to Shazam it, and you like, can't Shazam it.
Yeah.
The whole set. And I'm like, this is the definition of what a DJ is a crate digger. You know, back in the day, they would dig through crates, listen to the tracks in the record store, and they'd be like, oh, I just found a gem. And like, no one's ever heard this song before. And like that, as a DJ now, even though you're finding all your music online, you should be digging, right? Like you should be finding like really obscure, like really good music that has very little plays that people don't know. Cause like that's putting people like on an experience, you know, like curating a show in a way, a set in a way that they're like experiencing things they never experienced before, you know?
Gotcha.
That's what I think. So
that's fascinating. And it's interesting that was the first thing that you kind of started dabbling in.
That was the first
creative thing.
Yeah. Okay. Cause I played sport. It was always sports. That was definitely the first creative thing I did.
I think one fascinating thing about you is your faith in all of this.
Yeah.
Cause you know, you're pretty, you know, you speak of it online and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, which is great. How does that play a role in just everything you do? Cause you know, we live in a time where a lot of these creative industries, you know, there's not a whole lot of that, you know, and that might be changing now. I don't know. Like, I feel like there is a pendulum swing, but, you know, I don't really have a specific question in regards to that, but you can feel free to just tell me about, like, just how that is for you, doing all these things.
I know what you're trying to ask.
Yeah.
Like, I have a sense of what you're trying to ask, and it's like, my faith is very, I'm very vocal about my faith. You know, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and, you know, I follow Christ in everything that I do, and I'm a Christian, and I was actually, finally, after years of wanting to do it, I got baptized this year in the name of Jesus Christ, and I
saw that. Yeah. That's great.
And a couple months ago, it was like one of the best feelings I've ever done, because I was baptized, like, I wasn't raised Christian, right? So, like, I was raised Catholic because my mom was Catholic, but my whole mom's side of the family was, like, super Native American, right? So, like, very outwardly spiritual and, like, all these Native American beliefs, and my mom was, like, super anti that. So, like, I didn't even know I was, like, I was told, I've never done ancestry or anything, right? But at 11 years old was the first time I found out I was Native American. Okay?
Interesting.
So when I someone died in the family, and I showed up to my Aunt Dot's house, and there's a teepee in the backyard. And I'm like, what is going on?
What? I do a teepee?
There was a teepee in the backyard. My mom's in the kitchen all mad, and she's not taking part in it. And then I'm tying prayer bags with my Aunt Dee, and I did a sweat lodge. And
bro, you're living Indian in the cupboard, real life.
Praying to this guy, Tinkashala, like all this. It was one of the craziest experiences of my life. And that's when I found out I was Native American, right? And so my mom was super against that. I was raised Catholic, but I never, like, felt, like, super close to God in any form of way. In high school, so I had a rough childhood, right? Like, my parents got divorced when I was very young. Like, a lot of childhood trauma and stuff like that. And then in high school, I got a high school girlfriend when I was in a freshman in high school. And this is a time when I was, like, in a really, like, bad mental place. And it was, like, not a great, like, the relationship did not go well, but, like, I have a lot of, like love in my heart for this person, because they helped me through a time that was very tough for me. And in one of those ways, it was like teaching me about faith, and, like, showing me who God was, because they were Christian. Like, they were going to church, and they were outwardly like praising Jesus from, like, a really young age, right? So that was kind of my first exposure to Christ, right? And then my stepmom would go to church, and she would come to church with us and stuff. And I remember, like, post my girlfriend, I was at church with my stepmom, and it wasn't a Christian church. It was like I think it was a Baptist church, right? So I remember one day they spoke, and they were like, you know, if anybody wants to come up and give their life to God after church, like, please feel free to come up to a pastor, and, like, we'll we can do that for you. And excuse me, I remember I felt it in my heart that I wanted to do that. So, like, I guess you could technically say that was, like, my born again moment, right? But one of my good friends, Santi, he was, like, the first person in my friend group. He was, like, super, like, new age spiritual, like, into, like, all this crazy stuff, Luciferianism and all this other things. And he was the first one that, like, found Christ, and, like, really became outwardly vocal about it, right? And he helped me find it. And so, like, in the beginning of, like, a lot of these creative endeavors of, like, being a DJ and partying, finding acting, and kind of trying to figure out who I was, and, like, the jiu-jitsu helping me with my mental health and stuff like that. Ultimately, through all these things, I was looking for something to help fill, like, this lacking that I felt inside myself, okay? And I owe everything that I do, it's not because of anything I've done, right? Like, people can very easily say, wow, you've done these great things, and that's, like, because you did it. And it's like, I don't believe that's true. Like, I believe anything and everything that I've done is because of God, you know, like, at the end of the day, my whole story is already written. And, like, there's things that I feel passionate towards, or, like, things that I might want to do that might not necessarily be what, like, God's vision for me is, right? Because, like, we talk about our identity in Christ. And this is something that I struggle with a lot, is, like, you know, in this life, like, trying to figure out who I am as a person and what I want to do. Like, ultimately, like, what is it that, like, God wants me to do? Like, what is the gift that God gave me? And, like, what was I really put on this earth to do, like, to go out and do? So I now, as, like, a 27-year-old guy, like, through therapy and all this stuff, I'm just now kind of starting to wrestle with who that is. Cause I'm, like, since 25 years old, like, going to therapy, trying to fix a lot of this stuff from my childhood and like ways of operating and like all these things, while also like discovering myself as a Christian. And like, yeah, it's really easy for me to be vocal about my faith in front of anybody and everybody because I know what God has done for me. And I know it to be true in my heart, right? Like I have the Holy Spirit inside myself. I know that Jesus is King in my heart. Like I know that to be true. So it's just easy for me to be able to sit in front of someone and tell them, yeah, like Jesus did all this for me, you know, even though I don't deserve it, right? Because I'm a sinner. I'm not perfect. I've done a lot of things wrong. I don't deserve any of this stuff. But the cool thing about Jesus is even though you don't deserve it, he does it anyways. God loves you anyways. You know, he sent his only son to come and die for all of us and shed his blood for all of our sin, even though we don't deserve it, because he loves us that much. Like, that's what I think people like kind of miss. Like, God loves you so much that he sent his son to die for you so that you may be saved, even though you don't deserve it. Like, that's how much he loves you. So, and I know these things to be so true in my heart. Like I've experienced it. My wife is Christian. Like I know the things that God has done for me. And even though my life is a constant struggle, like I'm living paycheck to paycheck now. Like it's never been easy. Like at the end of the day, I don't have that worry with like, is this thing going to work out for me? Like, can I make it as a DJ? Man, am I ever going to get that breakthrough in my auditions? Like, you know, am I going to get promoted in jiu-jitsu? Is it something I can maybe start a school and teach? You know, like, are these things going to happen? Like, I don't worry about that stuff because at the end of the day, I know that God will provide for me, right?
And so that is like almost a real representation of cast your worries. Well, how does it go?
Yeah, like cast it on the cross, right?
Yeah, cast it out. Like, don't worry about those things anymore.
Yeah, it's like the things you struggle with and the things that are difficult, because like the career paths we've chosen are so hard, right? Yeah. Being an actor is so insanely difficult. Like, think about all the actors right now that are being so impacted by this strike. Like, working professional actors that even when they were working, like, had other jobs to like pay their health insurance and all these other things, like depending on their paychecks. These people are struggling right now. And I'm not even someone that's in the union yet. I'm not even eligible, but like, I know that one day I will be. So like I'm an actor, so I support this cause and I'm struggling no matter what, right? Whether the strike's going on or not, I'm struggling because I'm not even getting that work as it is. But the difference is, and you know, anybody can have whatever they have, but like in all of this, what keeps me going and what keeps me with my head held high is like, I know in my heart that God is looking out for me and God is going to take care of me. And yeah, like when through all these difficult things, when I'm depressed or when I'm anxious or when I'm worried or when maybe my identity in Christ and my like how I identify myself, like when those things are out of alignment, like I can take all those things and like I can cast it on the cross. And, you know, cause I know ultimately at the end of the day, I can't do any of this alone. I don't create my own destiny. Like, I can work as hard as I want on things, but no matter how hard I do things independently, I'm not what makes any of this stuff happen for me. Because I can work as hard as I want on this one thing, and if it's not what God wants for me, it's not going to happen, right? And like, I think that's like one of the hardest things for Christians is like that analogy of like being on a 2-person bicycle, right? And like the whole idea is that how we normally walk around is we're in the front of the bike and Jesus is behind us. And we're trying to navigate where we want to go and stuff. But ultimately, the life as a Christian, when it gets easier is when you decide to let Jesus sit in the front and steer the bike. Sit in the back and he steers the bike and you just go along for the ride. And there's times where you're like looking over the shoulder and you see Jesus going this way with this thing and you're like, I don't know, Jesus, I don't know. God, I don't know. I want to go this way. Like, are you sure? And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's realizing that if I question which way I go when he's trying to take me one way, I'm ultimately trying to say that like I know more than God, right? Because if God knows what's best for me, why am I questioning which way he takes me or what he's leading me down or what I'm meant to do, right? God gives us all these resources in this world, like our money, our time, our skills to like give back to other people, right? So it's like the best thing when I'm at my best is when I'm on the back of that bike and I'm letting God take me where he wants me. And that's why through all of this stuff, like, trust me, I struggle every day. every day is a hard day right now, especially right now. Like through all these endeavors I do, like I have so many things I'm passionate about, and none of them just outright make me money to like pay my bills. Okay. I'm a bartender. Like I don't want to be doing this. We've worked so many, how many weird jobs have we worked, right?
A lot.
We used to wrestle alligators, dude. Like
I know.
We've done everything you can think of.
Florida shit.
Yeah.
That's a weird job down here. Like that's a filler job down
Yeah,
here.
it's a filler job.
Yeah.
I can't pay my bills. You know what? I'm going to go to that gator park. And I'm gonna,
Yeah.
You have gators that need to be moved? Cool. Like I'll move them for you.
Oh, we have to do shows? I can hone a couple of skills while I'm here.
I can talk loudly in front of people while I feed this alligator chicken. So it's like I've done all of it too. I've worked sales. I work in food and beverage. Like I've worked in retail. Like I've done whatever you can think of, right, to get by. I during COVID I delivered pizzas to keep the lights on, you know. So it's always been a struggle, and like especially as a like I didn't decide I'll live on society's terms. I'll go get a 4-year degree to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, and then like have basically like a secured job where I know that I'll be able to take care of my family and stuff. I decided to like pursue passions, right? And like through these passions, it's very, very, very tough. And so in all of that, it's finding out, like letting go and like realizing that maybe what I want isn't what God wants for me, and like knowing that if I'm doing something and struggling with it, it might be like when I think, oh, maybe this isn't what God wants for me, but if these things I'm being successful in, ultimately, yeah, God can use you in any place that you're at, right? And so like no matter how hard things are, and trust me, they're hard every day. Like every day I wake up and I'm like worried about, I'm worried about something, even though I know I shouldn't be. But what keeps me here and what keeps me going, and like ultimately what has saved my life, truthfully, honestly, and all of the just like things I've done and things I've struggled with, like God saved me, like straight up, Jesus Christ saved me. And that was literally what he was brought here to do. And that's why I have no problem like sitting on this podcast, knowing that talking about Christianity might be tough for people to hear, right? And that's okay. Like this isn't for everybody, you know, like not everybody can. This is a tough thing to understand. Like when you explain religion to someone, there's like the logical aspect of it, and then there's like the feeling aspect of it, right? Like some people, you can literally sit down with the Bible, explain things to them, and they can go, wow, this is the truth. And some people, it doesn't work that way, and they need to experience something that happens to them. Like my friend, he had to experience evil things happening around him and then experience God to go, oh, this is the truth. And I know a lot of people that have experienced that way. And then I know some smart people that are very logical with it, right? So I know it's tough for people to like hear this and understand, or maybe like they had a bad experience with the church growing up or with their family. And I mean, I did too. And so I totally get it, but I can be very public with my faith because ultimately at the end of the day, no one's opinion matters towards me other than God, because my identity doesn't come from these things that I do. Like I'm an actor, I'm a DJ, whatever, or my identity doesn't come from what other people think of me. My identity is in Christ. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. So it's like, yeah, I do all these things, but that's not what makes me who I am. You know, God is what makes me who I am. So it's like, that's why it's just easy for me. And I think this is what, you know, faith-based people and even non-faith-based people struggle with. You know, I think a lot of people struggle with identity and who they are and where they're at in life and what they're meant to do, because purpose is difficult to find. It's hard to like go, this is my purpose in life, like on your own. And also just because when this isn't something that's active in your life, because remember, I was there too. I was lost. I was, you know, in college, and I was drunk all the time, and I was like engaging in lots of casual sex. Like I was looking for something. I was trying to fill a void with something. You know, it was a very difficult time in my life, and ultimately what saved me from that was Jesus, you know, like, so it's like knowing what he's done for me. I can absolutely, you know, say this, like undoubtedly.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people do struggle with their identity, and, you know, I mean, this is something that, you know, I struggle with too.
I still struggle with.
Yeah. Especially because, you know, I've made it a challenge to read the Bible from beginning to end.
Fantastic. So you started with the Old Testament.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm about, you know, a quarter of the way through.
Have you read the gospel?
Before?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I have in the past,
Okay.
like I've gone to church a couple of
Yeah.
times, but like verses at a time. But I wanted to make it a point to, from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah. Line by line.
Old Testament God is wild.
Oh yeah. It's wild. But there's there's a lot in there too, but it's brutal. It's harsh.
It's harsh. Very harsh.
And so that's something me and my wife are doing, 'cause she's listening to it on audio from beginning to end.
Great way to get it in if it's hard for you to get it in, for
Right.
sure.
And anyway, what you said about identity, that's a real thing, because after the pandemic and after, I put a lot of my identity into gator wrestling even.
Yeah.
And I don't have that anymore. Like, I'm not acting anymore. And I feel like I've been going through kind of an identity crisis as well. And as someone who also believes in Jesus as you, obviously I'm a little bit greener with it. So, I think settling into it will take time to cast the worries of identity aside more often than not. But so with that being said, because you had said something earlier about not knowing what God wants you to do, do you think that'll get revealed to you eventually, or do you feel anything you're doing now is starting to look like that's what you're meant to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because this is something I'm learning now, right? Like I go to a therapist and she's also a Christian, so it makes it easier, right?
That's nice.
Yeah, because I'm going and I'm figuring out a lot of these like ways of operating that I, unbeknownst to me, have been doing since I was a little kid, because it's how I learned how to survive. And then I'm also like going with like the spiritual stuff, and I'm figuring that out too. But identity is absolutely something that I've struggled with for a long time. And it's as clear as like looking at how many different things I've done, right? Constant need to try to find out who I am. Who is Tyler? How do I fit in? How do I be accepted? All these things, right? And it's so, for me, what's kind of making it easier and becoming a parent is kind of like realizing that like God gives everybody a gift, right? And this is like, it's in the Bible. It said, this is how it works. Everybody is given a gift. And so I'm starting to realize like what my gift actually is. Like, I started teaching this year. Like, I started teaching Jiu Jitsu.
I saw that.
Yeah. I teach a fundamentals Brazilian Jiu Jitsu class, no gi, Mondays and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. at my gym, Iron Life Athletics. And through teaching that and like having done some director stuff as an actor and like helping people tape with auditions, or just like the place where I've been at in certain places I've been in my life, like kind of always being the center figure and being someone that's a good leader and someone that's able to listen and someone that's just able to help people and like people listen to me. Like, I've realized that like, like my identity in Christ lies somewhere in that gift of like teaching, or in like being there for people and like being a leader. And what exactly it is, I'm not sure. So that makes it easier, but
serving others ultimately.
Serving others, exactly. Like, I care a lot, I care a lot about people at a fault to more than myself. I'm a big people pleaser. I don't know how to say no. I'm bad at setting boundaries. You know? Like, these are things I struggle with a lot, and almost to a fault, but I care a lot about people and like wanting to help people. And like, there's nothing more satisfying than like helping someone break through in an audition, or like being in class and seeing my student is struggling with this technique I'm teaching him. And then finally the light bulb clicks off and he gets it. And he's like, oh man, this is awesome. And then telling my students, get a book and write down the things you're learning so like you can follow along. And then seeing the next class, that's one of those students pulls out a little book and starts writing down things. Like, that's a beautiful moment, And so identity is something that as a Christian, like, you're gonna struggle with for a long time. And I'm talking about it very openly, like it's easy. It's not. I'm still struggling with this, right? I wake up every day and I feel confused, and I'm like, I feel kind of lost, and I pray to God, and I'm like, what is it that you want from me? Like, what do you want my life to be? Like, you tell me and I'll just follow, right? And it's not that simple. Like, God's not just gonna tell you. Like, God puts you, like, I know at the end of the day, these hard trials that I'm being put through, ultimately this all comes from God too. God doesn't just give you the good things in your life, he gives you the bad things too. And because it all comes from God, right? So it's like, I have to be thankful for the struggles that I'm having, because I know they come from God, and ultimately it's for a larger purpose, like what I'm actually meant to do or where I'm supposed to be and what's supposed to come in my life. So it's like, yeah, it's really difficult. I think what ultimately makes it easier is just knowing that God's word is truth. You know, I know in my heart that what God says is the truth. I know that he's going to take care of me and he's going to provide for me. And like, that's what gets me through. Cause if that wasn't the case, man, I'd be scared right now. You know, I'd be scared.
Yeah.
Even saying it, I feel scared. Right. So, identity, learning to like let go of what you think your identity is, or trying to find your identity in the things you do, and learning to just like be with God and like listen to God and read the Bible and pray and allow your identity to be what it is that God wants you to do is a skill. And it's not easy, but it's something you can work on. And it's currently what I'm working on right now. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. There's books, you know, just reading the Bible is great, but there's like books that help with this stuff. Like I'm reading a book right now called Soul Care. And like the whole point of the book is it was a course developed by this pastor, and it all comes from like the Bible and like how he's learned to identify like identity in Christ and what that looks like. And ultimately a lot of this stuff, why the identity is hard to find, is because of our trauma and our past, and you know, what we say about ourselves and what people say about us. Like these are things that are difficult. Like life is hard, and like society's brutal, and you know, none of this is easy. So yeah, I think what makes it easier is just knowing that at the end of the day that, you know, God wouldn't lie to me, and you know, I know that God's word is fact and he will take care of me, you know? So that's what makes it a little bit easier, because I'm literally currently right now struggling with this. Yeah, it's not easy.
Well, man. I appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah.
That's good.
No problem doing it.
That's really good. And I think that's an appropriate place to end this, because ultimately, you know, I feel like that's the one thing about you that I found so unique, you know, having all of these things that you do with that in the mix. You know, it's a breath of fresh air in a way.
Yeah.
To see someone like you who is skilled in many different things and who pursues many different things in industries where having a faith is not necessarily common, or maybe it is, it's just not so known.
Yeah.
Amongst people.
It doesn't feel easy, right? So
it doesn't feel easy, right?
If like, you know, because like we said, God uses us in whatever place we're at. Right?
Yeah.
So if in these certain industries where like maybe not everybody is as faithful or like believes in Jesus or whatever, like in the acting world or this, if I can be a beacon of light for someone, because ultimately at the end of the day, I just want to live Christ-like, right? Like I want to live as close to the life Christ lived as possible. I want to be as Christ-like as I can. And like the way I try to do that is by, like, I don't go around just like evangelizing. I mean, I do in a sense, but like, I don't just preach to people like, oh, you're struggling with this, I just start preaching to them. What I do is I try to understand, because honestly, at the end of the day, God loves everybody, no matter who they are or what they choose to be or choose to do. And what I try to do is show them God's love through me. And that's it. I just try to be a good person, and I try to show the love that Christ shows me to other people, because if you don't believe, it might be hard for you to feel the love that God has for you, because God loves you, you know, no matter what. Like, we're not perfect. We make mistakes, like, and he loves us no matter what. So in these parts of our life where we do these things that it might feel difficult to be outwardly faithful, because I definitely know in the beginning of my faith, it was very hard to be outwardly faithful. It's easier now because I just want to love people the way that God loves me. That's it. You know, makes it a lot easier.
Well, Tyler, I appreciate you being the first guest.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. It's really good to see you. This was a really good experience.
Good, man. This is something that, you know, I want to keep doing. I definitely, anytime you want to come back.
Yeah.
Come back.
Sure.
We'll do it again.
Absolutely.
So where can people find you?
Yeah, so I guess probably one of the best places to find me is on Instagram. You could find me at Tyler_Veinot. I'll spell it. It's at TYLER_VEINOT. I'm not the best at social media, but I'm trying to like build myself as a brand in martial arts and all these different things. So I'm posting more reels, like working out, going to the gym, training, you know, acting, if I do acting related stuff, I try to share it. So that's
that's the world we live in, man.
Yeah.
The business is online.
Yeah, it's online.
Yeah.
It's really weird because it's not the type of person I am. I'm very like
I'm
old
right
school,
there with you.
You know, one day I want to just have a farm and a quiet life, you know. So it's definitely obscure and odd, but that's probably the best place to find me. And if anybody has like questions about anything we talked about today, if anybody needs help with like the industry or talking about martial arts or where can I start to sting or health related stuff like food and wellness, all that stuff, like, you know, Christianity, whatever, like, please feel free to reach out, DM me. I'd love to talk to you. So yep, that's the best place to find me.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thanks again, bro.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll
Thank
talk
you for having
soon.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely good seeing you.
Absolutely, man.